She is in the house with me today, and we're going to be having a very beautiful conversation. Ambassador, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Blakk Rasta. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad that you accepted to talk to us. Thank you so much. We appreciate this. Now, walk me through your life. How did you become an ambassador?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that ever since I was a child, I was fascinated by countries all over the world and different cultures and different people. And I think that eventually, after going through some length, and pursuing a totally different course of work, I worked as a lawyer before.
Wow.
I decided to become a diplomat, and I never looked back ever since. It's an amazing, amazing ride.
What about being a diplomat is interesting to you?
Well, I think first and foremost, I take real pleasure and real pride in representing my country. And it's always a challenge and something that I very much enjoy to see how I can present my country to people from different cultures all over the world. Some of them have some kind of acquaintance with Israel and some not, or some to different levels. And different people have different perspectives of Israel, so the challenge and the goal to have people understand Israel better, be acquainted with Israel, and do it with different cultures and different people from different, really all parts of the world. It's fascinating. I really enjoy that.
Interesting. Were you born in Israel?
I was born in Israel, yes.
Which part of Israel?
Actually, it's a small town not far from Tel Aviv, around the center of the country. I know that you've been to Israel once, but I can't believe you've been there. It's a really small place.
Interesting. I was going to say, how did you know I was in Israel some time ago? Anyway, so I'm going to ask you this other question. Okay, what about Israel do you like, and what about it don't you like?
Well, I think I like about Israel, first and foremost, our people. Our people, we are warm people, we are open, we like to talk a lot and talk loud and have lots of food and meet people and engage with them. And by the way, I see many similarities in these characteristics between Israelis and Ghanaians. And I think that's one of the reasons why we connect so well, because we're people that love life and enjoy life. What I don't like about Israel is sometimes people are too loud.
Wow.
And what we call chutzpah, I don't know if you came across this concept of being, how should I translate that? Chutzpah is putting yourself first, whether it is your place or not necessarily your place to be first. So you push people around.
Wow.
Some people do that. That is a characteristic that I would not appreciate so much, but it's part of the whole deal.
Wow. Part of the whole deal. Okay. Now, walk me through Israel. I mean, if we say Israeli, is it the same as Israelite?
It's not the same. Israelite is the name for the Hebrew people in the Bible, whereas Israelis are the people who live in Israel and have Israeli citizenship of modern state Israel ever since 1948.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Now, the Israeli people, who are they?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time to cover each and every one. We are about 9 million people.
9 million people.
Most of the people in Israel, about 75%, are Jewish. But we have about 20% of our nation is Muslim and many Christians. And since we are a new nation in a very old country, the Holy Land, you have representation of so many Christian denominations and churches in Israel, I think not parallel to any other place in the world, to the best of my knowledge. So it's a very diverse country where you have communities that may be very orthodox and conservatives, and some may be very, very open and liberal and secular and religious. You have all flares and colors. When the Jewish people, after 2,000 years in diaspora, returned to Israel, that would mean that you would have communities. They came in from so many countries, be
Right.
them Iraq or Iran or Egypt or Libya or Ethiopia or Germany or Poland or the UK or so many other places, Latin America. So you have a very big diversity of people, and one of the very positive outcomes of this is a very rich cuisine.
Interesting. Now, 25% Muslim. What's the percentage of Christians in Israel?
I don't recall right now, but it's that if we have like 75% Jewish and about 20%, I'm not accurate exactly on the figures, but then we would have 5 to 10% Christian.
5 to 12. So it means we have more Muslims in Israel than Christians.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Now, I'm interested in the Israelis in the diaspora. How did they find themselves in the diaspora? What's the history?
Well, are we talking about the Jewish people in
The Jewish
diaspora?
people, yes.
Well, we had our kingdom, of Judea some 2,000 years ago. And then we were conquered by the Greek Empire and later by the Roman Empire. And around the year 100 AD, the Jewish people rebelled against the Roman Empire. And that led eventually, of course, to the crushing down of that rebellion and to sending almost the entire Jewish people to the diaspora, to all over 4 corners of the earth, wherever you had the Roman Empire rule, you would find Jews. So we were spread all over the world.
Okay, so it was through the conquest of the Greeks and the Romans and maybe the Turks and so on and so forth that you got scattered from Judea.
Yes.
Where was Judea?
Judea was mainly the mountains of Judea, which are part of what usually is referred to today as the West Bank.
The West Bank.
But you have Samaria and Judea, that is actually what is today the West Bank. But the kingdom spread beyond that. That was the heart of the kingdom. And of course, the heart of that kingdom was Jerusalem. But it was not only in the mountain area, but spread beyond that to other regions of the Holy Land.
Interesting. Now, when the Jewish people got scattered and they went into the diaspora, before then, in Judea and neighboring areas, which other people did you live with? Did the Jewish people live with? Was it a 100% Jewish empire?
Wow. You take me 3,000 years back in history.
I know.
I have to, to recall and to see if memory serves me right. Basically, we were not just the Jewish people in the kingdom of Judea, but predominantly, yes, there were Jewish people in that kingdom.
Do you remember any other peoples around? Did you live with the Palestinians?
There was a nation called Philistines.
Okay.
The Philistines, originally, we call them in some chapters of the Bible, you can find reference to them as people of the sea, because they have immigrated to the southern part of what is today Israel, to Ashdod and Ashkelon at the time. They have migrated from the islands of Greece. That's where they originally came from, and they were referred to as the Philistines, like Goliath was a Philistine. There was no reference to the word that you use today, which is Palestinians, which is taking the name of the Philistines. It's a very complex history. When the Romans conquered Israel and they wanted to drive all the Jews out and to abolish any remains of even the history and the culture, they have renamed the territory the Philistine province.
So it was the Romans who named it
as a Philistine,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
And many, many years afterwards, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, at the end of World War I, which would make it around 1917, the UN has decided to give this, the former territory of the Ottoman Empire, to divide it between mainly the UK and France. And the UK, when they had this UN mandate over this territory, they have decided to call it Philistine or Palestine.
Palestine.
Land of Israel, hyphen Land of Israel. So it has actually two names. And this is the source and the origin of the name and what we refer to today.
So from the history that you are telling me, the original area is actually a Jewish area. And Philistines came all the way from Greece, migrated all the way into the area. And then they became known as the Philistines, right?
Yes, thousands of years ago, yes.
Wow. All right. So as it stands right now, what you are telling me is that the land there is actually a Jewish-owned land. They just went into the diaspora and returned home. True?
Basically, that was the kingdom of the Jewish people. And we were forced into diaspora. But for 2,000 years, every day we would pray with our face to the east, which is Jerusalem, and pray that we will never forget the Jerusalem and pray for the return of the Jewish people to its home.
So you returned after 2,000 years?
Yes.
Interesting. Now, when you returned, there were some people already there, and they were the Palestinians and some other people around there. I remember in 1948, there was that UN mandate that you talked about, that the land was supposed to be divided between the Jewish people and, of course, the Palestinian people. Did you succeed in dividing it?
Well, the UN resolution on the separation of the territory between homeland to the Jewish people and the homeland to the Arab people, they were not even referred to as Palestinians per se, was taken at the end of November 1947. And the Jewish people, we were concerned. We were, in a very heated internal debate. We saw that the territories that were presented in this partition resolution were far from what we wanted to have as a national home. Eventually, we said, we will take it. We accept this resolution. We will have our national home at whatever the UN has allocated to the Jewish people. After 2,000 years in diaspora, finally, and horrendous suffering throughout this entire era, finally we had a chance to have our home, our country, back in the Holy Land. But at the same time, the Arabs rejected this and would not agree to have the partition plan. They wanted the entire territory to themselves and to drive all the Jews out. And consequently, a war erupted, the War of Independence. And the Jewish people, the Israelis, won the war, meaning that we were not exterminated and we were able to maintain that territory that was given to us and take some more territory.
Are you interested in taking more territories?
No.
You want it to remain the way it is?
We want it to remain the way it is. This is the place where the state of Israel is today. It is not about taking more territories. No.
Are you going to recognize a Palestinian state?
Eventually, this is the goal. We know that the only solution to the conflict we have with the Palestinians will have to be a political one. This would be the only sustainable solution, as was demonstrated with our neighbors, with Egypt and with Jordan. After many wars with the armies of Jordan and Egypt, we came to a point where we were able to sign peace accords, and they have been sustained and maintained ever since then. With Egypt, it was 1979, and with Jordan, it was 1994. And ever since then, through thick and thin, through many changes, even when Egypt was controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, which are no friends to Israel, I assure you, even then, peace was maintained and the accords were maintained because this was at the best service of national interest, national security interests to all parties involved. And we hope and aim to reach that place with the Palestinians as well in due time. The road is very long and rocky.
In the interim, you don't recognize a Palestinian state, do you?
Currently, we do not recognize a Palestinian state. We say that under international law, in order to recognize a state, this state has to have an effective control of its territory, defined borders, all kinds of elements that define a state under the provisions of international law. And these are not answered by the situation today is that the Palestinian territories are not actually defined by internationally recognized borders, by effective control of the territory and other elements. So we hope that this will happen in due time. But currently, this is not the case.
Currently, this is not the case. I'm going to take you a little back into history again. I mean, when the Jewish people came into the present-day Israel, the Palestinians were all over the place. How were you able to defeat the Palestinians in a war when you were the minority? Did you have support from the West?
We had the strongest weapon any nation could have.
Wow.
We had no other place to go. And that's it. We had to fight for our country and we had to fight for our lives because there was no other place we could go. We had to hold on and to fight the enemies. There were many of them. We fought 7 armies in the independence war because some countries would even send
yes.
military units from Iraq that had no border or no conflict with Israel. And still, we were about roughly 600,000 people, Israelis, Jews, at the time, and there was no alternative. We won the war.
I'm still wondering how you won the war if you were only about 600,000 people and the Palestinians were running into millions, right? And they had the support of the Jordanians, the Iraqis, and some other Arab, countries. How did you do it? Was it the power of the weapons or the will of the people? What was it?
It was more the will of the people than anything else. I mean, we were better organized. We knew that a war will be coming on us the minute we will declare independence. We were better organized and better prepared, I guess. There was very minimal support by some Western countries, but we were able to win the war because it was a very strong determination by the people that knew that there's no alternative. We have to win it.
I have some friends in New York, and they are, Israeli people. They are Jews, actually. And then the other day I called them and they said they were demonstrating in New York against the killing of Palestinians in Gaza by their own people, the Israelis. I was a little surprised. Did you hear about such demonstrations?
Of course.
Oh, wow.
First of all, Israel is a democracy. There is room for many opinions, and even at a time of war, where you have people that do not agree with the war, they are, of course, free to express what's on their hearts and on their minds. And Israel can absolutely say that they are supporting the war or not supporting the war. And of course, that when you have people that are civilians that are involved, people in the Gaza Strip that are being hurt by the war, it's a tragedy. It is not our intention. It is not our goal. We are at war with Hamas ever since October 7, because on October 7, Hamas launched an unprecedented onslaught of killing and carnage against Israel, southern part of Israel, and killed about 1,200 people, killing everybody and everyone in their path, be them Jews, Muslims, Christians, people that were Israelis, people that were foreigners, and you could see that they were coming from Africa or Asia. Many of them have been taken hostage by Hamas terrorists back to the Gaza Strip, as well as 239, altogether 239 people from Israel were taken hostage. And all this through ongoing barrage of rockets and missiles all over Israel. And ever since then, we are 48 days now at war with Hamas. And this is the goal of our war. The goals of our war is to bring the hostages back home and to bring Hamas to a place where they cannot no longer rule Gaza Strip and they cannot have any military capabilities. But our goal is not to hurt Palestinians that are civilians that are involved. And unfortunately, this thing is happening. And we don't have war with them. We don't have war with the Palestinians or with Islam, just with only with Hamas, because we can no longer have this evil right next to our territory, and we are exercising our right and our obligation to self-protection and to defend the citizens of our country.
Before Hamas, Israel was still pounding Palestine and killing people, true?
We were fighting against terrorists. And unfortunately, you have terrorists in the Gaza Strip. You have many organizations there, and it's ruled by a terror organization. But you have quite a few terror cells in the West Bank. And our fight is against terrorists, against people that are a threat to Israelis and a threat to Israel.
Before Hamas, what other terrorist groups, in your words, were there?
Well, Hamas they still have some presence in the West Bank, but there is Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Before we had, there's Tanzim groups. Before we had the Oslo Accords with what is today the Palestinian Authority. At the time, it was referred to as the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So all kinds of elements of terrorism that used to work, and some of them still trying to operate from within the West Bank and affect the safety of Israel.
So the PLO was a terrorist organization?
Yes.
Led by Yasser Arafat?
Yes.
What was the relationship between Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin?
Well, you take us back in history to the beginning of the 1990s. Yasser Arafat was a leader of the PLO for many decades. By the way, the PLO, which is, of course, the abbreviation is Palestinian Liberation Organization. So one would think that the PLO was established after 1967, right, to fight the fight of Palestinians for liberation from Israel. The PLO was established in 1964. It started its terror operations against Israelis in 1965, years before the 1967 war. So let us not forget that the PLO originally was established to fight Israel for the very existence of Israel. That was the goal, the destruction of Israel. So people mistake it to think that it was only after 1967, but it was not. So Yasser Arafat was a very, how should I put it? The feelings in Israel against Yasser Arafat were very strong. And it took us quite a long time to reach to a point where we can sign agreement.
The feelings were very strong. Means what? You had a love relationship with Yasser Arafat?
He was a leader that led a terror organization that had dozens and hundreds of Israelis killed. So the feelings, when I say very strong, I'm trying to say very diplomatically, there was a lot of hatred, of course.
Okay.
Yes. How else would you look at a leader of terror organization that has caused so much suffering and damage to Israel? So it took us a very long time to reach to a point where we can actually sign the agreements. And one of the very basic and initial elements on this path was an official letter of the PLO renouncing terrorism. That was the only way to move forward. Otherwise, you cannot have a peace agreement with an organization that is calling openly for the destruction, for your destruction.
Was it the denunciation of the PLO or of terrorism?
Yes.
Which one?
The PLO renounced terrorism from that point onwards and said, from this point onwards, we will no longer use terrorism as means to promote the Palestinian cause. This eventually, it did not materialize the way we wanted it to materialize, but that was a crucial starting point. From that place onward, we could really continue with the dialogue and with negotiations that eventually led to the Oslo Accords in 1993, 1994, and to the establishment of the Palestinian Authority and to the beginning of the self-governing of Palestinians from Ramallah.
Yasser Arafat was such a diplomatic figure. I think at the time he had a very good relationship with Yitzhak Rabin. True?
It was, I don't know if it was good relationship, but I think eventually they came to a spot where there was more trust. There was enough trust to enable both of them to continue forward because, again, a leader of a terror organization that was operating for decades against Israel, both on the terror level and the political level. It was a very fierce enemy of Israel, but eventually we were able to come to a place where Yitzhak Rabin was shaking hands with Yasser Arafat and trying to move forward together.
Was that why you assassinated Yitzhak Rabin?
Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by a Jewish assassin, a very extreme right-wing.
Who didn't want the peace process?
Who didn't want the peace process, yes. And accused the peace process and our engagement with Yasser Arafat, with the Palestinian Authority, accused them of the growing level of terrorism that we were experiencing at that time, mainly by Hamas, by the way.
What's your position on that? Do you support that? Do you support the right-wing extremism kind of?
Of course not. Again, Israel is a democracy. There's place for many voices, the same way as you would find in many other democracies all over the world. But I think that for every diplomat, if you ask them, they would always choose the middle way, the middle path of diplomacy, of engagement, of finding, actually aiming to achieve a win-win situation, whoever you deal with, whoever you negotiate with. I always tell people that this is probably why I left my previous profession as a lawyer, where you are actually trying to get to a win-lose situation in court, right? You represent your client and you want him to win and the other side to lose, basically. Whereas in diplomacy, you strive to a win-win.
Right.
When there's a win-lose, actually, both sides lose.
The guy who assassinated Yitzhak Rabin, what happened to him?
He is in jail. He is prison for life. And no chance of parole.
He's going to be in there?
Yes.
Interesting. Your killing of innocent children in Gaza and some other such places, has it always been reactionary?
It's, first of all, it is never our intention. And we find every soul that is lost, any innocent life that is lost, a tragedy. I would like to remind us all that when we're talking about children, we need also to remember the hundreds of children that were slaughtered in their beds by Hamas terrorists on October 7, and the dozens that were taken hostage, and we're talking about babies and toddlers and children that were taken hostage and are now held for the last 48 days somewhere in cages, we don't know where, without any access to their families, without any access to the Red Cross to visit them and see their conditions. Some of them have been orphaned from both parents and have no idea that this is the situation. And I think it's crucial when we talk about children also to remember and to talk about the Israeli children that has suffered so immensely. By the way, among these, the people that were hurt, we're talking about thousands of people that are still hospitalized and about 200,000 people in Israel that have been displaced and cannot live for now in their localities and their homes in the southern part of Israel because of the destruction, the level of destruction that took place there is, you have to see the pictures, and even then you can't believe it. So this is something that we have to take into account. Unfortunately, when you fight a war, and we are, as I said, we are a country that is ruled by law, and we oblige to international law and laws of armed conflict. And these laws allow the fighting to take place in urban areas. We have tried and called and did everything within our power to have civilians clear the areas where war is taking place and move to a safe place and provide also corridors that are safe to move from the northern part of the Gaza Strip to the southern part, whereas Hamas was trying to force people to stay and to continue to abuse them as human shields. And unfortunately, many people are being hurt in this process, but the fault and the responsibility for the lives that were lost is only to be blamed on Hamas, which have started this conflict, started this war, and is abusing its own people as human shields.
A lot of countries in the world have condemned the killings, the brutality in the Gaza. Would you say that they are all wrong and you are right?
I would say yes.
They
We
are
are
wrong.
all wrong and we are right. Because we have tried with Hamas, we have tried everything else. We have tried peace, not peace per se, but we have tried some kind of stability, of quiet, of trying to provide and enable better livelihood for the people of Gaza. And Hamas sees that as a threat, because when you have better livelihood, when you have stability, when you have some kind of future to look to, then you do not result in despair and terrorism and death. So Hamas cannot have that kind of future for the people of Gaza, because then people will not turn to Hamas to become terrorists. So Hamas was actively destroying everything that was established before that. We were working with the Palestinian Authority, for example, to enable development of an offshore gas field that would have made the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinians have much more power, maybe power independent. Everything that was there on October 6th was destroyed. And we have encountered a genocidal attack that people who has witnessed the attacks and the outcome of attacks of ISIS and other genocidal terror organizations, they say, and they're not Israelis, they say that the level of the carnage, the brutality that took place on October 7 is unparalleled to what ISIS was doing. So we ask you, we ask everybody, how can we continue to live and survive with this terror organization that is openly calling for the destruction of Israel, openly calling for the killing of every Jew everywhere in the world. We cannot continue like this. This is our, October 7 is our 9/11.
Right.
This is a change of paradigm. We have to destroy Hamas. And unfortunately, when you have a war that is taking place in urban welfare, we're taking place in one of the most densely populated places. You have innocent people being affected, being hurt, being killed. And at the end of all this, I would like to remind us all that the figures that we are looking at are provided by the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health. They do not differentiate, by the way, in the total numbers between the numbers of terrorists and the number of uninvolved innocent lives. So you have to take all this into account when you look at this tragedy.
Interesting. So my guest in the studio is the Israeli ambassador to Ghana, Her Excellency Ambassador Sufa Shlomit. Yes, my guest, and we're having a conversation, and it has to do with Israel and, of course, Palestine. That is center stage right now. Now, Arab countries are joining hands. They're beginning to join hands with Palestine to fight Israel. Are you ready for this?
I would like to make that differentiation. We're talking about terror organizations that are trying to support Hamas. We have seen an escalation, growing escalation on our northern border with Lebanon, where Hamas is in control of southern Lebanon. And by the way, there are other terror organizations there. There are also Hamas operatives working from southern Lebanon trying to attack Israel. And we have seen Hamas is trying to steer more terrorism and unrest in the West Bank. And we have seen the Houthis in Yemen, which are also, all of them are working or proxies of Iran. So there's no coincidence that all of them are operating together. They are well coordinated, and all of them are heavily supported, financed, and receive weapons and even logistical support by Iran. And the Houthis, for example, they have declared war on Israel at the end of October. Why would the Houthis in Yemen declare war on Israel? So you see the impact of Iran very clearly. Houthis have already launched a good number of cruise missiles and ballistic missiles on Israel. Almost all of them were intercepted. Houthis, actually, just a few days ago, they hijacked a ship going through the Straits of Bab el-Mandab and towards the Red Sea. So they're threatening commerce and movement of goods and energy through one of the busiest and most important channels of commerce internationally, which is the Red Sea leading towards the Suez Canal. And they have hijacked a ship because they claimed that it was by Israeli ownership. There was no Israeli presence there. They took hostage, I think, 25 or 35 seamen that have nothing to do with Israel. And it was actually a British ship that was only very partially owned by an Israeli. Who provided them this intelligence of the ship, its whereabouts, the ownership, everything to do with who gave the Houthis this intelligence?
What's your guess?
My guess would be Iran, because they have the capacities, and I doubt that the Houthis have these capacities.
So all these countries are now against you. Are you ready for that?
Unfortunately, we are prepared, and we will fight wherever necessary, and we are trying to answer all these threats in a very measured, very calculated way, trying not to reach any escalation, but rather de-escalation. And for example, right on the very first days of the war, we saw a very strong speech and statement by President of the United States, President Biden, saying to any other element in the region who is thinking of joining and supporting the war, we say don't. It was a very strong message. And American words were also supported by American deeds, where they have sent 2 aircraft carriers to the region.
So America is your biggest ally right now.
Absolutely. America is our biggest ally.
So America supports the bombing of people in Gaza. Is that it?
America supports a fight against radical Islam that is not about fighting for Palestinian rights, but rather fighting for the destruction of Israel. And we see this radical Islam, and we see it operating in Africa, and we see the threat of radical Islam, be it ISIS or Boko Haram or Al-Shabaab, in the Sahel, in East Africa, in other regions, in Asia, in Latin America. Radical Islam supporters openly marching in Europe. We see the threat that is a joint threat by, be it Ghana or Israel or France or the UK or Canada. We see it everywhere. And the fight that Israel is fighting, US, UK, and many other countries understand that. We fight a fight that if we do not stop radical Islam, there will be no stopping to them, because what they want to establish is their presence worldwide. I think, and we've seen so much support to Israel by so many countries for this war, despite the damage, despite the loss of lives, because countries that support peace, countries that are ruled by people that love life, that share the same moral compass, all of us together, understand the importance of defeating Hamas despite the high cost.
Interesting. Now, I was in Israel, as you said, and I had the opportunity to meet with Mahmoud Abbas. And, it was a rare opportunity. I wasn't expecting it, and it happened. I was also expecting to meet with the president of Israel at the time. There were, some connections for me to do that. Unfortunately, we were told that he was out of the country and would not be returning anytime soon. And what Mahmoud Abbas told me was that all he was looking for was for Israel to step out of Palestine. Because everywhere I went, I saw Israeli soldiers, some of them standing on hills and mountains and, raised platforms. And it's so terrible. I mean, when you enter the areas like a war zone, when you are in Israel, Tel Aviv and those areas, everything is peaceful and nice. But just as you are moving into Palestine, and you see signboards all over the place, you are moving here at your own risk, blah, 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 blah. And there are soldiers holding guns all over that route into that area. Is it not one of the things that the Palestinians are trying to fight against? Say that, please, stay in your country, let us also stay in our country.
First and foremost, we have to make a difference between the Hamas and the fight against Hamas with the other elements that you have described. Right. Because, as I said, and I think it's not just an Israeli opinion, you can ask anyone, Hamas is not about the liberation of Palestinians. It's about death. It's about destruction. It's not about life. It's not about establishing a Palestinian state. It's about establishing a radical Islam caliphate, the same way that you had the ISIS ideology. It's the same kind of radical ideology. So fighting Hamas is not part of that reality at all.
But the Palestinians support Hamas.
Palestinians,
they support Hamas.
They support Hamas. Not only Hamas, but many Palestinians would like to have. I'm not in a position to speak on behalf of the Palestinians.
Right.
I'm a representative of Israel, but I'm sure and certain that many of them want better future, better livelihood, stability, and peace. And when you describe the situation that you see when you travel in the West Bank, I wish to remind you that this is actually a part of the Oslo Accords, when we said that there will be a division to 3 kinds of regions within the West Bank. One that is entirely controlled by Palestinian Authority, one that is entirely controlled by Israel, and one where the civilian control of the territory is done by Palestinian Authority and the security is done by Israel. because we know that there are still many terrorist elements there. So unfortunately, we're still in a place where there's a need for much Israeli security presence. But again, this is part of the agreements that we have signed at the time. And in due time, when the time is right, we hope to be able to move forward with more agreements that will lead to better outcome in the future. But this will take a lot of time.
Cutting off power and cutting off electricity and water to people who live in an area, and they are made up of the so-called terrorists in the area and the so-called non-terrorists in the area. What do you think about it?
I guess you're talking about the Gaza Strip.
The Gaza Strip, yes.
So I would like to set the record straight. On October 6th, we had 3 pipes of water running water from Israel to the Gaza Strip. We had 9 lines of power. Hamas, when it launched its attack on Israel, as I said, it was at the same time they launched a barrage of thousands and thousands of rockets, which, by the way, did not cease until this morning. All in all, we have experienced more than 9,000 rockets on Israeli territory.
Did they all land or they were intercepted?
Most of them were intercepted, but some of them did hit Israeli localities, caused death and injuries.
Oh, really?
Yes. And by the way, 20% of them, so out of a total of close to 11,000 rockets, 20% of them misfired and land in the Gaza Strip, causing death and destruction to Palestinians themselves by those terror organizations. So on October 7, launching the barrage of rockets, those Hamas rockets cut off the power of 9 out of 10 lines of power leading from Israel to Gaza Strip. So when we're talking about, for example, Israel cutting off power, that never happened. It was the destruction of 9 of 10 lines of power by Hamas rockets. The destruction of 1 of the 3 pipes of water by Hamas rockets. And we were able to fix this and to return the power coming from Israel to Gaza and the water pipes. Please remember that all in all, in terms of power production, 50% came from to the Gaza Strip from Israel, but 50% was locally produced.
Locally means what?
Locally means that there is a power plant in the Gaza Strip, and there are solar panels and there are generators. So there is 50% of the energy that was consumed by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
But that was bombed. That was bombed by Israel, right?
That was not bombed by Israel. That was we know that we are limiting the amount of fuel and solar that would enter the Gaza Strip. We are, by the way, enabling and facilitating the entrance of humanitarian support to the Gaza Strip, be it food, water, medical supplies, and lately also, we allow as much as has been offered. They all cross from the Egyptian territory into the southern part of the Gaza Strip. We do not limit the numbers, but we have to make sure that no weapons are, for example, smuggled amongst this support, which was the case in the past.
But we see in the reports that Israel is trying as much as possible to limit the flow of food and aid to the people of Gaza. Is that false?
It is not accurate at all. We allow as many trucks as possible. So far, we are close to 2,000 trucks of humanitarian support, and it includes food and medical supplies. We allow water and also some energy like fuel and solar. And our concern with the issue of fuel is that we have seen this already taking place in the last couple of weeks. Hamas is taking control of these provisions, stealing from its own people, taking medical supplies from UNRWA hospital, and using or abusing the fuel that would otherwise serve, the needs of people, of hospitals, to use for its own generators to provide ventilation for the terror tunnels that it has built underneath the Gaza Strip. We're talking about roughly 500 kilometers of tunnels. And when you think of a tunnel, you have to think of a well-ventilated, well-lit tunnel. Some of them as big as being able to drive a Hummer Jeep through it. And this needs ventilation. So Hamas is desperately in need of this energy.
I'm going to go into some specifics very quickly, very, very quickly. Now, there was a Palestinian journalist a female, in fact, who had, press boldly written on the chest and at the back. And she was supposedly shot and killed by Israel. Do you remember this story?
We're talking about a Palestinian journalist that
Yes,
it took place at the West Bank.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you remember that as Israel accepted that they did it?
Yes, it was. She was very close to a place where there was exchange of fire between Israeli military forces and Palestinians, and unfortunately, she was hurt by a bullet, and she was killed. But this was not an intentional attack against.
But Israel denied it several times. It was the world pressure that came on Israel to accept that.
It was first denied and then further investigated. It was extremely difficult to investigate because in order to investigate such an incident, you have to, unfortunately, investigate the body itself and the bullet. The bullet was not released until a very later stage back to Israeli authorities. So forensics were able to analyze and try to understand what happened. And yes, this is the nature of a democracy, and this is the nature of a military and a government and a country that obliged to the rule of law. And if we are incorrect, we make the record straight, and we admit that we were not right, and we take the blame when it is the right case to do so.
Was there a compensation for the family?
That I cannot recall.
You cannot recall. I will. Okay, so Al-Aqsa Mosque, I see, at the time that I was in Israel, I was able to go down there and look at the place and then, be spiritually uplifted and all that. I went also to, the birthplace of Jesus Christ, and I went and did all the things that I did as a tourist and all that. Now I see Israeli soldiers walk into Al-Aqsa Mosque and beat up worshippers. Is it true?
It is absolutely not true. We see Israeli defense forces that are forced to enter the mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a holy place, because it has been desecrated by terrorists and by people that want to create a security threat both to the worshippers and to the Jewish worshippers of the Wailing Wall, or Western Wall, which is only a couple of dozens of meters away. So after we have tried everything within our power to call out and use even Palestinian leadership to call out to these people to leave the mosque, there was no alternative but to enter the mosque and take these people out. We're not talking about worshippers, we're talking about people who were arming themselves with deadly means, who were barricading themselves in a holy place and trying to make a fort out of it in order to attack people in the vicinity, and especially Jewish worshippers.
I saw women too beaten up and being chased out of the mosque in videos.
That I cannot comment. I'm not familiar with these images.
Okay, that is fair enough. Ras Mubarak was a sitting MP. He tried to enter Israel. In fact, he tried to enter Palestine through Jordan and all that, and he was refused entry. Do you have any information about this?
Remind me, please.
Ras Mubarak was a sitting MP, Ghanaian MP. Now, he tried to enter Palestine. He had a visa, and he was going through Jordan and all that, but he was stopped by Israeli authorities from entering Palestine.
Do you remember when it took place?
Yes, a year before I went to Israel. I went to Israel about 5 years ago, so that's about 6 years. Before you became ambassador for Ghana.
Well, I'm not familiar with this specific incident, but I can say that Israel, like any other country in the world, has the prerogative to decide whether people are eligible to enter the country or not, even if they were given a visa by any embassy around the world, be it our embassy here in Accra or any other place, in any other embassy. Still, the immigration authority in Israel has the prerogative to decide whether a certain person is eligible to enter the state of Israel or not, judging by different kind of characteristics, be it, potential of that person to be dangerous because of security issues, because of potential for, any other element that could be of danger to Israel, or that we cannot find it acceptable to have that person enter.
You have a lot of support from the Christian world. I mean, people believe that Israel is a holy place. Our president went all the way to Israel to bring a stone to use as a foundation for a cathedral that was so needless. And Ghanaian people are suffering, people are struggling and crying about that. I put that on one side. Today we're talking about Israel. Do you see Israel as a holy place, personally?
I must say that yes. I'm not a religious person, but whenever, and I don't live in Jerusalem, but every day when I'm in Israel, I work in Jerusalem, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and every day going through the entrance to the city, it's a different special feeling. It's a feeling of holiness and also the so many years of history. And it's easy to find history and ancient history all over Jerusalem. And I think you when you were there, you were able to feel that as well.
Yes, I felt it so deeply. But again, at the entry point at the airport, he asked, why are you coming to Israel? I said, I'm coming here to feel the spiritual feeling that is supposed to be here. He said, no, you can also feel that in your country. That was what, but I mean, I leave it aside. But let me go into this. The stories that we read about in the Bible, about the Red Sea and about Pharaoh and all that, do you believe in that?
Well, as I said, I'm not a religious person, but I do see the Bible as, well, it is so many things at the same time. It is a holy book.
Is it?
It's about the book of the Word of God to its people. But it is also a book about how the Israeli people came to be. It's our history book. It's a book about beautiful literature and songs, the Song of Songs. And it's also a tour guide. Because when you take the Bible and you travel through Israel and you read the right chapters, you can actually have the book as a tour guide to the places that you see around you.
Did Israel use the Bible as a yardstick to re-enter the territory called Israel today?
No. I mean, of course, we have yearned to return to our place of birth as a nation. But at the end of the day, we were officially acknowledged and recognized by the United Nations as a nation and as a country. And we were supported politically, for example, by the United Kingdom in the beginning of the 19th century, after the First World War, by the Balfour Declaration, that the government of the British of the UK sees favorably the establishment of a national Jewish home in that territory. So our core justification, of course, again, we return to our homeland, but we have a very strong political claim and official seal by the United Nations.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you some two stupid questions, and that will be the end of the interview. Now, if the Palestinian ambassador to Ghana walks into this studio right now and extends his hand, would you shake his hand?
Absolutely.
You will?
Yes.
What would you tell him?
I would tell him that I expect the Palestinian ambassador and the Palestinian Authority to acknowledge and condemn the massacre of October 7.
That's all?
At this point, yes.
How can there be peace in the area? In your, understanding of the area, what can bring peace there?
Well, it's a very good question and a very difficult one to answer. But I would like to begin my answer with a demonstration. In the 1950s and 60s, or ever since the establishment of Israel, actually in 1948, one of our most fearsome enemies was Egypt. Egypt was determined to lead to the destruction of Israel. And our fight in wars and otherwise with the Egyptian army, it was the most dangerous army to threaten Israel, and a very strong one. If you would say to any Israeli in the 50s or the 60s that Egypt would be the first country in the region to extend its hand, and proactively the president of Egypt at the time, Anwar al-Sadat, he made that journey to Jerusalem to talk about peace. If you would say to any Israeli in the 50s or the 60s or even the beginning of the 70s that Egypt would be the first country to have peace with Israel, they would say that you are delusional, that this would never happen. And it did happen. So we have to be optimistic. We have to look and work for a better future. We acknowledge that the only solution, sustainable long-term solution, will be a political solution, and that we have to reach eventually an agreement that will be sustainable between Israel and the Palestinians. But it's going to be a very long road to take, and it will take quite some time.
What would be that political agreement?
This is really way too, first of all, too premature to talk about at this point, and it will be way too complicated to address. This will require so much input by so many experts.
If this will bring peace,
If and when?
If it will bring peace, the UN mandate of 1948 that said, okay, divide the land into two, Israel take half, Palestine take half. Would you go back to that?
No,
now,
this is not a place where we can go back to. We have, at 1948, when the war of independence erupted, when we were attacked. We were attacked and we defended ourselves. Eventually, the territory that is today referred to as the West Bank was taken over by Jordan, and the Gaza Strip was taken over by Egypt. So up until 1967, these were either Egyptian territory or Jordanian territory. Eventually, in the 1967 war, we were able to take control of these territories. And by the way, it's important to note that in 2005, we have withdrawn all Israeli presence from the Gaza Strip entirely, up to the very last person. We did not destroy the homes that we had there. We did not destroy the facilities, the greenhouses that we had there. We left it all for Palestinian use. Unfortunately, it was abused for terror infrastructure. But we have cleared all the presence from the Gaza Strip, and with the West Bank, we have had the Oslo Accords that have actually divided, as we said, the territory to different regions with different elements of control. But eventually, at the end of the day, we will not change that territory, which is today defined but generally referred to as the green line. We will not change that reality back to the reality of 1947.
Ambassador Sufa, you don't have a direct solution to the peace between Israel and Palestine. Does Israel have one?
I think it's, as I said, this is a very complicated issue. I think that currently we are all focused on the war with Hamas and defeating Hamas. There will be, I guess, I make an educated guess that there will be many changes in the day after the war. But at this point, currently, I don't know if there's anyone who is actually working on that element, because we are all focused on the issue and the challenge of winning this war.
So it's wartime now. No talk of peace.
There's currently, as I said, we are at war with the Palestinians. I take that. We are at war with Hamas. Hamas is not an entity that you can reach peace with. It's like having a peace with ISIS. Right?
I'm talking about Palestine.
When we finish the war, we finish the war and achieve the goals of our war with Hamas, there will be time for other discussions.
But for now, it's war.
For now, we are all focused on that.
On the war.
Yes.
Is homosexuality legalized in Israel?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
And Israel is still holy?
Yes.
I like that. Okay, so how about marijuana?
It is not legalized in Israel.
Oh my God.
This is, I don't know, maybe you can come back to Israel and push this agenda forward. We had a political party that wanted to be represented in the parliament, but was not successful in doing so. And they were pushing towards legalization of, this kind of drugs, but currently it is not the case.
Have you used it before?
Never, ever.
Would you try it?
No, thank you.
Interesting. Ambassador Sufa, I would like to say thank you so much for accepting to talk to us. We certainly appreciate you. And maybe on a closing note, why should people come to Israel?
Well, there's so many reasons. Why should people come to Israel?
Yeah, are you open? The last time I checked, you were closed. You were not issuing visas anymore.
Well, currently it's a time of war, so I would say wait for the war to end. But Israel is not closing its borders. Movement is not as free as before because some air carriers have decided to halt their operations with traveling to Israel or back. But there's still flights. The international airport is open. And I don't know when you were seeking to have a visa to Israel. When was that?
Oh, the Ben Gurion airport, right?
Yes.
Okay, I remember the airport. Well, I mean, if I wanted to go to Israel right now, is it possible?
Yes. I mean, you can request a visa, and it will be processed. But currently, we are focusing on the war, so I would not actually recommend people from Ghana to travel to Israel at this time. We hope that the war will not be too long, and then everything will be open again. Recommending people to travel to Israel for so many reasons, to visit the holy sites, to enjoy Israeli culture and food, to have a good time at the beach, to swim with the dolphins in Eilat, or to enjoy the nature and see experience the most northern coral reef in the world.
Wow.
Or travel 3 hours or 4 hours from the southern part of Israel and reach from that coral reef and visit a skiing site in the Mount Hermon. So it's a small country. It's 22 1,000 square kilometers wide, but we run 4,000 years deep.
Wow, that is deep. I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate you. Yitzhak Rabin is what I'm going to play right now. Do you see him as a hero?
Absolutely, yes. He was a great leader that was able to transform from a leader of the military of Israel to a leader of peace.
Is it easy like that to assassinate your leader with all your intelligence? And Israel is number one country when it comes to spying. Is it true?
I can't really comment on that, but yes, we are.
Your PA is signaling me that it's time that you got to go, but I'm really enjoying the interview.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's we have very good security. We have very good security on whoever needs this kind of security. And I want to thank you very much, Blakk Rasta, for having me today and being able to share that information and perspective with our listeners. So thank you.
I appreciate you for coming.
Thank you.
And I pray that there's peace very soon so we can all travel in and out and go to the holy places and all that. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for coming. Blessed love. All right. So my guest has been Ambassador Sufa. Her Excellency, she is the Israeli ambassador to Ghana. She's a diplomat.
And there is slain, believe Hakomi.